Welcome to our second podcast. We're Clients First, Marketing and Communications. I'm Jeff Baum. You'll see on the screen John Clendenning.
Hi,
Um,
folks.
our first one dealt with the presidential election, and we all know what happened there. The second one, we've seen so many cases of foodborne illnesses recently. Listeria outbreaks, E. coli outbreaks, and there's so much in the way of public relations around that. How did these companies perform? How resilient is the brand? And then where do they go from here? So that's the way we're going to start. If you want to know more about our agency, please go to our website, clientsfirstmc.com. With that, let's dive in. I thought I'd start out with some stats. Everyone loves statistics. I know John loves statistics. If you take a look through the CDC at the annual burden of foodborne illnesses in the United States, this past year, there were 48 million people who got sick from foodborne illnesses.
Amazing.
Hospitalizations, 128,000 people were hospitalized because of foodborne illness. And then deaths, 3,000 people died from foodborne illness. Now, why is that the case? I mean, you can look at various things like meat and poultry. Meat and poultry account for fewer illnesses. They're responsible for, I'm looking these stats over here, so forgive me, 29% of foodborne deaths. So that's pretty significant. Globalization, the global food chains become much more complex and longer due to consumer demand for a greater variety of foods. Climate change, and we all have been affected by that. We know what it's been doing to our environment and our lawns and our plants and coral reefs. I mean, you name it. It's become, a real issue, and it impacts food safety. So, with all that in mind, let's jump to a couple of discussions, case studies, and then John and I will fight it out with a steel cage death match in case you're interested in seeing that. It's not going to be great.
Exactly. Before you dive into the first case study here, just a quick note: Happy Thanksgiving week to everyone. This is
Yes.
being recorded right the week before Thanksgiving, but we are one of the reasons we are doing food today is because this will show up on the Monday, I believe, of Thanksgiving week. So we are nothing if not topical here at On the Offense. So it's a big food week, and we thought that would be, we don't want to get in the way of your Thanksgiving dinner by talking about foodborne illnesses, but food is on the table, pardon the pun. So over to you, Jeff.
Yes, yes. And if you're really interested and you find it entertaining, play our podcast while you eat Thanksgiving dinner. I think that would be very nice for everybody. I think they'd really enjoy learning about E. coli and listeria. But anyway, I think I'd rather watch
Nothing goes
football.
better with turkey than that.
Exactly.
Hey, it's better talking about that than talking about the election at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there.
I mean, it's
Uh,
never a good time to talk about politics at Thanksgiving dinner, but I think especially this year.
yes, and yeah, there's no better way to bond with family.
I have two words for you: food fight.
Food fight. Now, that might be the way to settle everything in the United States. We have the left versus the right. Unfortunately, we're in the middle, so we're going to get bombarded with food. Well, let's cut to the chase. Let's cut to the actual cases of listeria poisoning associated. We'll start out with boar's head. As you all have heard, I can't imagine you haven't. At the end of July, Boar's Head had a big outbreak of listeria associated with liverwurst produced at a plant in Virginia. Now, it's kind of interesting because in 2022, the USDA did an inspection and found that plant to be deficient, particularly in the areas of, producing the liverwurst. Um, they found bad sanitary conditions, bugs on the floor, all kinds of things that needed to be addressed. And in response to that, Boar's Head changed out the machinery that was working on the liverwurst, but never addressed anything else. So it's no surprise. In fact, one of their top executives got indicted, and I believe was charged recently in this case with regard to the foodborne illness. At the time of that, Boar's Head issued a statement, very non-committal, but it was fine. It was basically, hey, we're aware of this, we're looking into it, we're going to act as soon as we know the facts, which isn't a bad way to start out. I mean, it would be my opinion there should be more empathy in that first statement. Maybe start out that, hey, we're really disturbed by all these reports of listeria, and if it's come from our machines or our plant, we'll take responsibility, but we don't have the facts yet, so we're going to investigate it. And as soon as we know more, we'll get back to you. And of course, we're going to cooperate with the law enforcement officials. I have a cold, so if you think I sound like I don't know, like sandpaper, that's why. I'm sorry about that.
I think
Um,
you sound better than ever. I like the new sound. I think you should take some meds to maintain your cold
oh
so you
my.
continue to sound like this. I like it.
I guess I like it too. Interesting. When you look at Boar's Head, and Boar's Head's a premium product. If you see it in stores, oh, this must be a pretty good place because they stock Boar's Head. And Boar's Head has an amazing variety of lunch meats, hummus, what have you. And I mean, for us, it's always been high quality. We know that, or we thought that if you have Boar's Head, you run a pretty good ship. And so that's why it was really kind of disturbing when this happened. I was reading an article in the New York Times. I'll quote a few things in here. The title of it was "Secretive Dynasty That Controls the Boar's Head Brand." And that's been like at the forefront of everything they've done since they were founded. They don't publicize their leadership. Their leadership just hangs way in the background. It's really controlled by two different families, and they go head to head on all kinds of conflicts. And there's a lot of competition within the company itself. So when all this happened, one of the things you want to do in a crisis response is be very transparent. You want to be there. You want people to know, hey, we're going to deal with this. In the meantime, we'll get back to you. I just promise them continuous response. Orset really didn't do that, and they delayed the response by a few days, which probably isn't the greatest thing in the world. And the first statement was one of, like I said, we're investigating, we'll get back to you, and food safety is a priority for us, which is fine. But they didn't even sign it by person; they signed it Boar's Head. I don't want to get into the factoids about the family itself, but there are two different families involved. And I'm going to stare at my iPhone so I can just tell you what their names are. Brunkhorsts and the Bischoffs. And they founded it way, way, way back in the early 1900s and originally started in Brooklyn, New York, where they ran a food truck that distributed deli meats. It became so popular, they decided to make it into
Hmm.
a store-bought brand, and they converted to that. And they're very particular about Boar's Head, and they wanted to market it as a premium brand. In dealing with supermarkets or any outlets that sold Boar's Head, they would go in and they'd make an agreement. Okay, if you're going to sell Boar's Head, we're going to be the lone premium brand that you sell. You can't sell Dietz and Watson. You can't sell any of the other brands.
Mhm.
And they're very stringent about that. That's great because you go in a store, you say Boar's Head, oh, this is good stuff. But it's a little hard for a lot of supermarkets to comply with. So that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. But when this all happened, they never really acknowledged the fact they were being investigated back in 2022 with similar problems. And eventually they expanded it to every meat that was produced at the facility, and I believe it was Jarrett, Virginia, which they've subsequently shut down. And that employs thousands of people and has a big economic impact on that part of the state. So it's a big deal. Now, I've got to tell you, I still have, and this is probably misguided, but a loyalty in a weird way to the Boar's Head brand. I went into the supermarket the other day at a store that sold Boar's Head, and I went up to the counter and I saw all these delicious meats, all labeled Boar's Head, and I really didn't hesitate to buy them. So if that says anything, it either says I'm really
Really?
not even
Even
stupid.
It's just the power of brand loyalty at work, right? There's a perfect example. You had done your homework on this case study for the purposes of prepping for this podcast. So you knew more than most, yet you still went up to the counter and were leaning toward the boar's head. It's just brand loyalty, and it shows how deeply ingrained it is or can be if a company is doing the right things over time, right? And it
Yeah,
helps
yeah.
you, it helps keep you afloat, if you will, when times are bad.
Yeah, and if you look back several years, I know here in Texas, and I'm not a Texas native, but we've both lived here for 24 years. Bluebell, which is a really
Yeah.
prestigious, delicious ice cream produced here, it had a huge recall, and it involved multiple brands and a facility, and that brand was so resilient. As soon as it went back online, it was even more popular than it was before. So that says something. And the case that John's going to discuss is McDonald's. What's more Americana than a Big Mac or a quarter pounder with cheese, which was the product in question in this case. But what's more American than going to your local McDonald's and getting those delicious fries and seeing the golden arches?
So, Jeffrey, thank you for the setup. That was perfect to get me going on McDonald's. And so we're going to take a look. We're going to take a step back at the supersized reach. Get it?
Yes, I
Supersized
get it.
reach of McDonald's in the fabric of modern American life. So McDonald's started way back in 1954 with Ray Kroc, who founded the first McDonald's in Jeff, do you know where the first McDonald's was?
Well, I believe it was in California, but it was founded by the McDonald's brothers who Ray Kroc put the squeeze on. And then he
Yes,
took
the
it national.
Michael Keaton movie, right?
Correct.
The first McDonald's was in San Bernardino, California, which is the unofficial capital of the Inland Empire region of Southern California. That was 1954. So this is, I believe, their 70th anniversary of McDonald's. It all worked out quite well for Mr. Kroc. In the end, he had enough money thanks to selling burgers to buy eventually the San Diego Padres. But today there are more than 36,000 McDonald's restaurants in more than 100 countries. So clearly, this is a global phenomenon, not just an American one. I'm looking at my factoids as well here. More than 300 billion with a B McDonald's burgers have been sold. More than 68 million with an M people are served at McDonald's on average every day. 68 million people
Incredible.
every day. It's unbelievable. My favorite factoid on McDonald's is one out of every 8 Americans have worked at McDonald's and at some point in their life.
Me
Think
too.
about
Yeah,
that.
I'm part of that.
The company stock is considered a barometer for the stock market in terms of consumer purchasing. So when there's a crisis at McDonald's, people feel it. So my daughters, one of whom is our director, you can't see her. Hi, Caroline. They are obsessed with their favorite murder podcast I think it's called My Favorite Murder. And the way the two hosts do that podcast is one of them does the homework and they present it, and then the other person reacts to it. And then they do a second one, and then it's vice versa. So Jeff did the homework on Boar's Head. I've done the homework on McDonald's. So Jeff, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this one. So what apparently occurred with McDonald's started in late September and it went into October. So people started getting sick after eating quarter pounders, with the problem spreading to 13 states, mainly in the mountain west area of the
Yeah.
country, Wyoming, Colorado, Dakota's kind of up there. Tests revealed that the problem was that the burgers were infested with E. coli bacteria. Ultimately, 75 people reported becoming ill, and one person actually died in Colorado. So, I mean, it's just terrible.
I think the number of deaths has risen considerably since then. I think it's like 9 or 10.
You're kidding. Okay,
No.
well, that's even worse. I mean, that's just a nightmare. Further investigation revealed the culprit not the beef patties themselves, but rather the quote slivered onions that adorn them, along with all of the, if you will, cheesy goodness around it. Now, where do these slivered onions come from? They come from one of these. I have props.
Wow, look at that. The yellow onion.
Right? Right? This is a yellow onion. And apparently, the problem was with the yellow onion supplier of McDonald's. Okay. Now, so not McDonald's itself, but when you have your own supply chain, you have to speak for, you have to own your supply chain. So the company first pulled the quarter pounder off the menu in those 13 states, then returned the burger to the menu without the aforementioned slivered onions. And that affected about 900 locations across those states. So the question then is, where did the onions come from? Well, they came from a regional McDonald's supplier. Now, you named names in your example, Jeff. I'm going to do the same. I hope they don't get upset. But the onions came from a regional McDonald's supplier called Taylor Farms, which is apparently a multi-state producer of vegetables and fruits. They put out a statement in October saying that they, Taylor Farms, had recalled several yellow onion products because of potential E. coli contamination. Jeff, take a look at this yellow onion. See this bad boy right here? Do you think,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
can you see any E. coli on it? I'm going
Of
to
course not.
turn it.
Microscopic.
You don't see any E. coli. And apparently it's guilt by association. Other fast food chains also stopped offering onions. Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC, and Burger King among them. So the entire onion family, if you will, was under suspicion. I have to say it, let's peel back the onion. You get it?
You're really funny. Yeah.
Let's peel back the onion. Did McDonald's? I had to go there. How did
No,
McDonald's handle the situation PR wise? Frankly, I would give the company very high marks in terms of how they handled it. Because Jeff, you mentioned transparency, and transparency is so critical in a crisis. You have to communicate as proactively as you possibly can. Yes, the lawyers are involved. Yes, they're watching every word. Yes, you have to be careful of everything you say, but as transparent as you can be, you're going to be better off almost every time, right? And that's the way McDonald's handled it. So they put out several announcements informing the public of what was going on and what was being done about it. They put their US president on the Today Show. So that's extra transparency, right? That's
right.
not just posting announcements. That's saying to this guy, we're going to put you on live television with millions and millions of people. They worked very closely with food safety authorities, and they continued to post new updates on their website, including, and this was my favorite part, their own internal employee messages. And those weren't leaked, if you will. That sometimes happens in cases like this.
Right.
They were proactively posted. Those of you who are loyal viewers of this now 2 episode old podcast will recall that, yeah, we talked about the election last time, and McDonald's was also in the news for when Trump went to the McDonald's in whatever state that was a week or two before the
I
election.
think it was Pennsylvania
Was it
where he
Pennsylvania?
served French fries. Yeah.
Yeah. In that case, there were a lot of people who said, oh, well, when you do something like that, half the people are going to be happy, half the people aren't going to like it. So for the people who didn't like it, they sent out an employee message there as well. And they also proactively posted that on their website. So it's one thing to be transparent with your external information. It's an entirely different thing to be posting your internal information. So I really do give them high marks for that. And I've read both of those messages, and they're very clearly carefully crafted, but they're very well done. The only thing they've been dinged on from some outsiders is not closing stores entirely. And now, why didn't they do that? The company addressed that, and it said it didn't do that because of the confidence it had in its food preparation and safety practices. So again, remember, the slivered onions did not come from them. Now, that doesn't mean that you still have to in store put everything together, but they had full confidence in that. And it's not like people were saying that their food safety practices in the stores were problematic. So they didn't close stores as a result of any of this. Let's talk about results and takeaways. Most importantly, I can joke all I want with the props here. People died, right? And so, you're in the food business and you've got a crisis. It's one thing to get hacked, but you're in the food business. People can die from eating your product. So this is not a laughing matter in any way. Not to mention all of the other people who got sick and had to go to the hospital. Just terrible. Having said that, short to medium term financially, foot traffic was down 9.5% nationally. I don't know exactly from my notes how long after this went public that 9.5% hit or stayed that way. That's a lot of money. I mean, what was it? 68 million people served on average at McDonald's every day.
Huge. Huge.
Whatever that translates to in terms of daily revenue, you take 9.5% off of that, that's a huge hit. Foot traffic 9.5% down nationally, but in Colorado and Wyoming, 33% down. Think of the financial hit that caused the franchisee in those states. Huge. The other thing was that this happened right at the end of the third quarter and into the beginning of the fourth quarter. They have since reported their Q3 earnings, and they addressed this rightfully on their earnings call. And they said that there would be no, quote, material effect on full year numbers based on these decreases in foot traffic. That doesn't mean there's no effect. It means there's no material effect. And this isn't the time to get into earnings verbiage, but they did address it on their earnings call. Longer term, I would argue both for McDonald's and other fast food chains and just food in general, when things like this happen, Boar's Head, McDonald's, we're going to talk about carrots as well. And rumor has it, Jeff, I may have a carrot prop as well.
Oh,
that's a teaser for the audience. So,
wow.
but no, things like this happen, and several of these things have happened. To Jeff's earlier point, it opens up discussions and questions about food safety in general, and no one wins when that happens, right?
No.
And so, I have to assume that any other company that serves onions has probably spent some internal time looking at their supply chain, figuring out how to handle it, perhaps updating their crisis plan, which every food and beverage company should have been doing the second this stuff went public, right? But I think takeaways, McDonald's, you mentioned your brand loyalty, Jeff, to Boar's Head. McDonald's has built quite a bit of trust over time. Their communications people are among the best in the business. Their food safety practices are considered best in class. And as a result of that, in addition to a result of how they handled this, I would argue they're going to get through this just fine. And they appear to have done that and appear to be doing that. Of course, if it happens again, once is once, twice is a trend. We'll have to see.
Right.
I would also be interested to see how this has affected their relationship with that supplier. I also wonder if other suppliers, and one can only imagine how many different suppliers McDonald's has, right? They're probably updating their own crisis plans, right?
I would hope so.
And they're probably more under the microscope with McDonald's. And you lose a client like McDonald's, you are going to have a material effect on your
That's a
numbers,
huge impact.
right? So there's a mushroom effect here of a lot of people being affected by this, not just McDonald's.
Yeah. One other thing I'd add on McDonald's, though, I thought it was really interesting that their supplier of chopped onions is a different company. So anything that includes chopped onions was fine. So I thought, wow, that is an incredibly precise supply chain.
So back to, this whole my favorite murder things. Jeff did Boar's Head. I did McDonald's. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff for carrots.
Carrots. Now, this is kind of an odd case. It happened really recently, and it's a whole E. coli outbreak that's associated with carrots and organic carrots sold at some of the most prestigious outlets in the US. If you go to a specialty grocery store or, a number of really prominent brands, I won't bring them up. So, oh my God, look at that. He even has the top on it.
I have another prop.
Was that
Not only is
homegrown?
this not only is this a carrot, Jeff, this is an organic carrot. Okay.
And you're now contaminated with E. coli.
Pur- Purchased at Tom Thumb, which is a premier grocery store chain, right? Now, as with the yellow onion, I posed the same question. Do you see any E. coli on this?
No, invisible. Even the little baby carrots. And just here's a little factoid if you didn't know, there's no such thing as a baby carrot. Those are big carrots that are scored down to the size of baby carrots.
I had no idea. So
Yeah, how about that?
I wonder if baby carrots have baby E. coli.
They may, they may, which is
Right?
even smaller
Smaller amounts
than
of
the
E. coli, but
microscopic
it's
E.
still
coli.
E. coli.
It's E. coli. And E.
It's
coli is a bad thing. Don't want to be too humorous about that because it can be deadly. In most
what
cases, it's not,
what
but it can be.
what is the singular of E. coli? E. coli sounds plural.
I have no idea actually. I've
E.
never heard
colis?
anything singular on E. coli.
E. E. colis.
E. colis, okay.
But if you have two E. colises, you have E. coli. My wife is on the other side of the computer and she's saying, "Oh God," under her breath. Have there been announcements made by carrot growers or supply? Has anyone taken ownership of it? It's not like you can tie this to a retailer like McDonald's, right?
Yeah. No, I think it came out from the USDA. I think the carrot producers have said some stuff about it. I haven't looked so deeply into this case compared to the other ones, but I find it very interesting. And when you hear vegetable recalls like that,
Yeah.
and I mean, we try to buy organic more than other types of vegetables, but it's usually organic stuff. Um, pesticides,
Really?
I guess, have a purpose. And this is one of the reasons
Well,
why I
they
think a lot of these recalls
one
hit organic specialty grocery stores.
theoretically you're buying a healthier product if it's organic,
Right.
right?
And I found out something else is there's no one definition of what is organic, which seems to
Really?
me like they'd be better off, creating one just so you know what you're buying.
You
But
know what I think the takeaway here is eat more processed foods.
yes, they're great for you. If meat comes in a can, eat it. And that's an advertisement for spam. I think it's really interesting. And, that's one of the hallmarks of living in the US, how much processed food you eat, how much processed food you have access to, how much
Yeah.
sugar and salt and different products that aren't really good for you
Oh
are in
yeah.
our foods.
Yeah.
And that's something we might need to take a look at. But in the meantime, as long as we have to go through these food-borne illness crises, I think you have to look at your process around handling a crisis, how
Oh
you
yeah.
involve everybody in your company, your transparency, getting out there with something empathetic because you don't only want to be a great food producer, but you want to be a good citizen and a good neighbor. And
Yeah.
if you can appear to be open, empathetic, and timely, that really helps in preserving your brand and your ability to bounce back from future crises.
We call this podcast On the Offense for many reasons. But the most important one is our view is that all marketing and all communication should be managed in a very proactive, aggressive manner. Crisis, by its very nature, is reactive. You are reacting to a crisis. But our view is if you don't have a fulsome crisis plan in place, you're not being on the offense, right? You can't
Right.
wait for this stuff to hit and then react because you're already behind. The news cycle is what it is, social. You got to have your plans in place ahead of time, regardless of what kind of company you have. What I've done in my time leading crisis development is, the first thing you do, it's actually kind of sick fun. Really, you kind of bring a bunch of people into a conference room. Okay, everyone, what are the worst things that could possibly happen to this company? And you get into a lot of really random stuff, right? But you just never know what kind of a crisis is going to hit. So you have to have everything covered in advance that could reasonably occur to
Right.
your company. And again, if you're in the food and beverage business, you
Hugely
know,
important.
some sort of contamination has got to be at the top of your list. And I
Yeah.
would also argue that if you have a supply chain supplying you things, it's one thing to hope that your suppliers have a crisis plan. I'd make it mandatory that they have a crisis plan and that you get a chance to review that crisis plan because you're the boss. They are your supplier, right?
Right.
So in the case of Taylor Farms, let's hope they had one. If they had one, it would be interesting to know if McDonald's had reviewed and approved it, right? Because sometimes this is about the supplier and not the person or the company with their name on the door.
I think that's right. One of the things about
Um,
McDonald's that I find so interesting, and I think that's what Ray Kroc found so interesting, was the way everything was standardized, the way they prepared things. They did
yeah,
everything the same. They had a very small group of products. They produced them. They always tasted good wherever they were. They had wonderful French fries. They had shakes and drinks. And it was simple, simple, could be replicated any place. And the way they made things was all the same. Any McDonald's you go into, they've got a big, it's like a huge skillet. One side you do little burgers on, the others is the quarter pound grill. They always put me on the quarter pound grill because I was slow.
we can have fun with this stuff. It is very serious in cases where people are dying.
Oh, it
Um,
is. It's super serious. And I think one thing with you have with
so anyway,
McDonald's,
um,
well, one thing you have with McDonald's and other food companies like fast food, they're all franchisees who run them. There are very few store
right.
stores run by the company itself. Those franchisees have to be in compliance with the standards that McDonald's puts in place. So that really ensures the fact that if you go to a McDonald's in Dallas or in New York or in California or in Madrid, I mean, I went to one in Madrid, the products are all the same. They taste the same, which to me, being abroad and eating wonderful Spanish foods for a week or two, having a quarter pounder with cheese, which is what I had in Madrid, was kind of like bringing home a little bit of, what we live with
Sure.
here, which I find a comfort food. One little advertisement for McDonald's was way back when I worked for them. They were incredibly cleanly and they were very focused on cleanliness.
I believe
And
that.
they inspected those places every night. So I think you can believe in the quality, at least in the preparation of stuff at McDonald's.
The other thing is, if everything tastes the same, if everything's the same, no matter where you are, one would think that their food safety practices are also uniform. So it's surprising, in a sense that they've had this problem. But again, when you got a supply chain, you have to own that, right? We are about out of time. May I say a couple of words about Thanksgiving in closing, Mr. Jeff?
Please, please,
I have three pieces of advice for those of you as you sit down for your Thanksgiving dinner. Number one, do not, do not watch the Dallas Cowboys play during your Thanksgiving dinner. Almost invariably, unless you are a fan of the Washington Commanders, they are going to ruin your Thanksgiving dinner. They are a Thanksgiving dinner ruiner. They are,
agreed.
right? I think most of us would agree on that. Anyone who's watched them would agree. Avoid the Cowboys, protect your Thanksgiving meal. The second piece of advice I have is be careful with slivered onions. If anyone is having turkey, cranberry sauce, this and that, and slivered onions, be careful. So I have a slogan, Jeff, to suggest for
I'd love to hear it.
Thanksgiving relative to slivered onions. Don't deliver the slivers.
Very nice.
You like
Very.
that? All right. And then I have one more slogan, and then I'll turn it over to you to close this out. The second slogan I have to suggest for Thanksgiving has nothing to do with contaminated food or anything like that. It has to do with the one and only Thanksgiving item, traditional Thanksgiving item that I loathe. I like potatoes probably more than the average person. I mean, who doesn't like potatoes, right?
Love potatoes.
With one exception, I despise yams. Yams are bad. They should be removed from the Thanksgiving vacation. And so I do not have a yam here to hold up, but I do have a slogan to suggest for Thanksgiving dinner. Are you ready?
I'm there.
Scram from the yam.
All
Scram
right.
from the yam. Don't deliver the slivers. Don't watch the Cowboys. Back to you.
You know what? I've got to disagree with you on the yam. I'm not a huge fan of plain sliced yams, but when they're in a casserole covered with some brown sugar, cinnamon, a crust on the top, that's a tasty meal.
It
But
ruins the casserole. The casserole's ruined.
I beg to disagree with you on that. And I
I'm
think we can
yucking your
agree to
yum. I
disagree.
apologize for that. I'm yucking your yum.
And also, I think it's really important that you have the green bean casserole with the onion ring topping.
As long as the onion rings are not slivered.
No, they're the dried McCormick or whatever they are that come in the little can. So
I
be
agree.
careful, but most of all, enjoy the big turkey, enjoy the chopped onions, enjoy the non contaminated carrots and all the other things that you may eat. Also enjoy a nice pumpkin pie, a pecan pie,
Oh yeah.
turkey or ham or whatever you choose. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time with family. Enjoy your days off. And I hope you join us again for our next podcast. We're even entertaining, maybe having like a panel discussion, do some interviews. We're going to try to change it up
Oh, yeah.
in months to come. So, John, any last words?
No, I would just say have a happy and yes, healthy Thanksgiving. Thanks, everyone.
And hey, don't forget to check us out on all the social media channels, which you can
Yes.
find at our website and also on our website itself. And if I tried to say our website's name, I would stumble on that. So you can all figure that out on your own. All right,
I couldn't
everyone.
help it.
So long. Happy
Thanks,
holiday.
everyone.